Hey guys, Kyle the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for One Piece episode 934. And to start off, for those who don't know, this episode is pretty much the last episode that the over-the-top opening theme is going to be used in. And I'll be honest, I'm really gonna miss it because, well, in some respects, you never want an anime opening to overstay its welcome. Just look at basically We Go for that example. It's just this is also an opening that just has such amazing visuals accompanied by a rocking good song that it gave you such a rush each week that you almost didn't care how good or bad the execution of the episode was. Now, from what I've seen so far, the brief little teases for the new opening we've gotten, uh, I think this opening is going to. I think this opening is going to be very unique, even among the ones we've gotten so far. Like I can't say for sure if the if the opening music is really gonna get you, but just on a technical level, I think visually this is gonna be one of the more interesting openings, honestly. Um, Now, obviously, with one of the primary focuses of this episode being on the battle between Zoro and Kamazo, there was there was a lot of hype and expectation that was built around this fight from last week. And I'm pleased to say that aside from some small things here and there, it delivered it delivered on and in some ways exceeded every single expectation I pretty much think we could have had as viewers for this fight. I honestly I dare say last episode and this episode have kind of outdone the manga in some respects. Like seriously, if I was to use the oldest analogy in the book, if last week's episode was the appetizer to the fight, then this was the main course. And speaking of the fight itself, one thing I noticed that definitely flew over my head when I was reading this in the manga is how this fight so simply but effectively showed Zoro's development. Because remember, throughout the fight, he was without Shusui, and for the most part up until the end without the use of his three swords, and the fact that he still beat Kamazo the fact that he still beat Kamazo just from using a scythe as his third sword shows that even though the three sword style will always be his trademark, in some respects, you could also say that he's grown strong enough to the point where it doesn't matter how many swords he has anymore. He's basically like don't get like obviously I guess in some ways you could say it was debunked by him using three swords in order to defeat Kamazo, but honestly, if anything, I think this episode proved that he didn't really even need three swords to defeat Kamazo. Like he's developed strength wise. He's developed so much that honestly his he I'm pretty sure if he wanted to he could have taken over with just two swords, honestly. But well, because it's three swords, we gotta kind of stick to the status quo on that one. Because he's the three sword style, you gotta kind of stick to the status quo on that one. Um, Now, having said that, like I said, even though the art and animation was pretty much epic and grand and just grand scale in this episode, um, one thing I admit that the art and animation in One Piece nowadays has been kind of taking me out of it are these moments of the characters, like you could say, practically going Super Saiyan. Like in some respects, I guess in this modern animation era, it's kind of expected that they use tricks like this, and it's not like a huge deal, but at the same time, yeah, it does kind of make them look like they're going Super Saiyan sometimes, and I wish they could use something a little more creative than that, but it again, it's really just a minor nitpick I have, but it's one that's been prevailing over the modern animation style of One Piece that I'm like, okay, it was epic, but you could have done, I think, without the. I think you almost could have done that without the Super Saiyan thing. But then again, but on the other hand as well, considering the technique that Zoro even used against Kamazo, it's it's kind of almost forgivable because he again it's like what was it, purgatory onigiri he was using. So yeah, I can kind of forgive it in that sense, I think. Um, so I guess the smaller part to talk about is the Luffy bit, and even even before I get into the Luffy part of the episode, though, I need a quick refresher on whether the Bearman fight was in the manga or if it was an anime only edition, because both he and the fight with Luffy was probably the most hilarious thing I've seen out of the anime in a while. Just on the voice acting alone, like the pretty much voice that Toei had given the bear and how it kind of contrasted back between the bear and the man. That was just hilarious. It was just like, holy crap, this is amazing. But that aside, there wasn't much there. I guess there really wasn't much there. It was just kind of put in as a little bit of a filler moment. But we we are getting continuous reinforcement that yeah, Hyogoro, he knows something about what Luffy's trying to do, and he is going to be the one to teach him the technique that Rayleigh had showed Luffy when he began his hockey training. So yeah, the little development there, I guess. And yeah, we see even more in this episode how the rebellion is pretty much starting to crumble as everyone who's allied with the Yakuza 9 is getting arrested left and right. And really, it's just reinforcing even more just how much there's a traitor in everyone's midst. In fact, with this episode, you could practically say he was standing right in the room with everyone else. um, right in the room with everyone else. When we cut, when we, but what, and when we cut back to the Law and the others, while at the same time showing they also have an unexpected ally, Antonio Yasu, and yeah, even though it's played as a confusingly cheerful reunion for Kanjuro and Shinobu, I guess it's also a moment where looking back as a manga reader, it's bittersweet, like bittersweet, and it gives off the vibe that we're getting closer and closer to a moment that'll cause a lot of waterworks as well as anger and rage for me personally. But even more so, we had probably, I think, Shinobu's best moment of this arc, this episode specifically. And well, we made this. Here's the thing: Shinobu basically says outright to Law, "Leave them to die," or basically, if you're going to go after them, kill them on the spot. Don't let them survive. Like, it's it's one of those things where even though from an ethical standpoint of killing anyone who gets captured, we definitely disagree with Shinobu on that. We just disagree with her. We are going to in some ways disagree with her on an ethical standpoint level, but but at the same time, it's also it's also a moment that does garner a certain amount of sympathy just from the point of just from her point of view when you realize that yeah, this is the one and only chance left that the samurai have left in order to retake Wano from Kaido and Orochi's vice grip. So if they fail here, it truly is all over. And like it's one of those moments where even though we know what's going to happen, in the end, it does emphasize the tough choices that need to be made when facing Kaido. Like when you face an Emperor of the Sea, there are tough choices you need to make, and again, it's pretty much what pretty much Shinobu is saying. It's kind of emphasizing that fact, even though we pretty much know kind of already how this is going to end. Of course, the stuff with the allies getting captured isn't the only amount of unrest happening in this episode, as we see the populace up in arms against Kyoshiro for what he did to Komurasaki, but the fact that she's still alive shines an interesting lens on his loyalties, which is the one problem I do still have with the over-the-top opening. In is that the anime-wise, we basically knew that where this is leading, what's gonna happen. Like he is at this point he is kind of more or less gonna fall. He is gonna where like logically he's more or less on the loyalty spectrum. He's more or less gonna fall in line with like pretty much with the samurai, with the Yakuza and Nine and all that. But on the other hand, it does show more of, even though he's kind of acts a little psychotic as well in this episode, it also shows more of who Kyoshiro is in terms of his true identity, so to speak. And if the preview is anything to go off of, the next week's revelation is going to expose that even more. Like there is no like getting like it's one of those things where I'm really starting to realize just how obvious Kyoshiro's true identity actually was. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Crunchyroll. Dad Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.